Good morning. Let's see. Today's Wednesday. Well, let's get started. Cool, finally. Yeah, welcome, Karakan. I am just kind of waking up here, so let's see exactly what I can do. Alright, so I think yesterday we finished up, we got these objects automatically detected, automatically put into the world, everything like that. So we can snag these, we can do stuff with them, it all works. Yeah, I saw. That's what I figured. Yeah, I figured. I figured if anything is an emote, it's me being upset. And maybe I can spend some more time and make something that actually, you know. Oh yeah, we messed around with all these mushrooms. Let's get rid of these. We don't need all these things. All right. And it's been a while since I actually built all the static lighting for this thing, so I should probably just go ahead and do that. So I think I was trying to think about what I was actually going to be working on today, and we actually have like data, right? Like we can actually, I think, turn this sort of stuff into actual, actual flow field information. So we just need to figure out a couple things here. So why is this lighting taking forever? Did I change some of my build settings? No, it's just going a little slow. Alright, let's save everything. Let's see what we got going on. Alright. So one of the things I want to figure out is how do we actually read this information at runtime? So we've got this water blueprint. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to figure out a way to, like, if we are an object and we are on this water, we need to do things with it. We need to read information out of it. So how are we going to store this information? One of the things here is, like, we have the textures, but can we sample a texture at runtime efficiently? Like, can we actually crack open one of these textures? So let's figure out if we can. Doesn't really look like it, does it? So let's think for a minute. How exactly? So we've got these textures, and we're going to need to read the information from them, and I'd like to store it. You know, like we have these U assets where we're actually storing our generated flow field information. Is we're storing them in these textures. You know, like we've got information. This is obviously not finished, but we want to be able to access all that information, not just from within our materials, but also from within our blueprint if we have to. Let's get rid of all these potatoes. We don't need them. Not anymore. Well, let's see. Can I save binary data? Or I mean, I want to store structured data that was statically computed in kind of a nice organized fashion, and then read it back out. I mean, basically what I want is a bunch of colors, a bunch of linear colors, which would be vector 4s, and I want a big array of them, and I want to store them right next to the texture or something like that. Because, I mean, I could read the texture, but I have a feeling that's going to be really slow because textures are like all compressed and everything else. And I don't want to have every instance of this blueprint have a copy of this data. Like, let's say we have, you know, a piece of water, but we've copied it all over the place. Like, if we have a very large track, probably there's going to be a lot of these little scenes in it, and they'll be kind of copies of each other. And if every one of them had a copy of the data, it might be, you know, wasteful. Let's just construct some of this static stuff again. Yeah, that looks like it's working pretty well. Alright, cool. We can always shape these things a little bit differently if we wanted to look a little better or something like that. And this data will turn into an actual texture. But I want to figure out kind of one of these answers first, which is how we're going to store this information. I could make kind of a UAsset type here, kind of like we already have some types which would have an array of stuff on it. So let's see. Just gonna read a little bit. Let's see. Well, I'm guessing, I mean, I'm not sure the right way that I should actually be doing this, but what occurs to me is I should make a new asset type that I'm just going to call like a vector array uAsset thing, and I need to just add that object to the editor inside of my plugin, and then I'm going to save that uAsset type just into the world here. So that type needs to exist inside of the runtime component, but the factory and everything else needs to exist inside the editor. Alright. Well, let's just do it. What we're going to do is make it so we can save this. So it's going to be a new object type. So we've already got a place where we kind of throw all this sorts of garbage, but we need, and this is like our camera object, right? So let's throw this at the top. So this is going to be our Dashkin. I mean, what should I really do with this? I guess I want like a T-array of vector 4s, I guess. So Dashkin storage object, and let's just kind of just have a junk drawer sort of data type that we can store whatever we need to in here. So we'll have a T-array of f vector. Is there f vector 4s? Because I want the alpha channel. Yeah, it looks like there's a WXYZ with an f vector 4. So I'm just going to say m vector array. Just call them vectors. I think it's blueprint. Read write. Alright, so I'll have our Dashkin storage object. Do we want anything on here other than this? Maybe we want a reset method so it can like clear itself out. And that's about it. And anytime we need to actually store some data, you know, so we can load it, you know, later. So some static data that gets kind of baked in. This is how we will do it. Okay, so we're gonna need a factory for this thing. That factory is going to have to exist I mean, we should be able to create the factory off in our editor plugin. So let's do that. And if you're wondering what I'm doing, dragging all these files over to the right, I'm just checking them out in Perforce. Alright, so I'm going to need... anytime you want to make a new asset and have it available inside the editor to actually go create it, you have to make a factory for it. So Dashkin, storage object factory. And if you don't make one of these things, then you can't make it in the editor. Like right-click, create object, stuff like that. Finds the storage data object factory. And it's kind of a bunch of copy-paste to make these sorts of things, but it's not the nicest thing in the world, but hey, it works, so I guess I can't complain too much about it. So what's this thing named? Dashkin storage object. Create the new storage object. So the question here also is, should this exist inside of the runtime component so I can actually make this thing with a utility function without this entire thing freaking the hell out? And the answer is sadly yes. I need to throw this inside the editor utils stuff. Man, I do not know what I would do if oh, am I totally screwed with this? Am I getting back into the same territory where I needed a factory to make a texture asset, but I couldn't include the factory? I think I am. Oh shit. Well, we're back in the same spot where I was yesterday, or the day before, where what I need to do is make a factory. I mean, I could just go make another plugin here for this thing. Ooh. I'm not super happy about this. It's like I just want to be able to make an asset and save it. You'd think it'd be simple. You'd think it'd be simple and straightforward to do, wouldn't you? But it's not. Because I need this code to be in the right spot, otherwise it's not gonna link together. And this has to go in a header because we have to have this generated U-class body for this factory. Oh, okay. So the other thing we could do is we could just add this to the core engine somewhere. You know, we could kind of just put some of our stuff somewhere here. Kind of a junk drawer spot. crap. Alright, well... I mean, or I could just go make another plugin and get it all compiling and everything like that. I mean, at this point, like, there's a clear need. This is the second time I've run into this issue. Maybe I should just make a plugin which has editor stuff that I can use. So what would that look like? The plugin would have factory. Where in the hierarchy would this thing have to exist? Like, we'd have to call functions from blueprint land which would reach into this. It's a plugin that we would... I mean, I'd almost have to make two plugins. Like, I'd have to make one plugin which is editor specific, which has the factories in it, and then I'd have to make another plugin which that plugin could rely upon, which has the data structures. So I'd have to actually make two more plugins to be able to effectively use this. That's crazy. I just want to save a freaking file. You know? I just want to save something as a nice U asset that gets loaded in. As a T-array of vector 4s. Fuck. Alright. I'm thinking we just go ahead and make the two plugins. Oh man, this is just... That's gross. It's been a very long time since I made plugins. Alright. So I'm going to have to mess with this a little bit. Well, I'm just gonna... I'll update the channel since we'll be working on plugins for now. Oh, that's just... It's really cumbersome. So basically what I need to do is, because I can't include... Because the Unreal header tool can't pound if stuff out properly, we are not able to both reference things in our blueprints at runtime and also create them inside of the editor without having a lot of specific code there. Because the blueprints will break when we build it client specifically or shipping, because those like functions that they want to call, which would have to reference these factories, you know, that stuff isn't going to exist. We have to have that off in a plugin. We have to have the factories off in, you know, an editor specific plugin so it can be compiled properly and linked in. And we can't have the function that references that. Like, we need to have the actual data structure exist too, and the plugin needs to reference the data structure. So that plugin can't have both the data structure and the factory, because then it won't build properly. So we have to have two plugins, and you have to conditionally include it based on if you're building the editor or not building the editor. Because the pound ifs do work inside of the CPP files, because C++ works properly, just the Unreal header tool doesn't work properly. Alright, well, let's make sure we're in a clean state before we embark into editor shim land here. Yeah, okay, it's complaining that I have a linker error on the game data reset, so I'm just going to comment this thing out, and I will get to it later. So we'll make sure we're in a good state, then we'll set up these plugins. And I'll have to relearn how to do that. Alright, so we're in a good state now. So let's go to our plugins. Alright, so how these plugins work is we need basically two different ones of these. We're going to need, just going to copy these wholesale. So we're going to have Dashkin editor shims. And Dashkin editor shims runtime. Alright, so we need to mess with these things, don't we? We need to make these not read-only. Alright, so to make this thing, basically, we need to rename this file. This is going to be Dashkin editor shims editor. And let's see, we're going to want Core Object Engine Slate. I don't think we're going to want any of these things, but we are going to want the Dashkin editor shims runtime plugin to be in there. Let's see, input core, slate core, property editor level, editor, head. Let's see, we'll need asset tools and all that stuff probably. Shims runtime, image wrapper. Yeah, we don't need that. We may need it later. Alright, so this will be our editor plugin. So, do we need anything here? Base editor tool. No. Let's add a placeholder.txt to make sure this file, this folder will exist in Perforce. And how these things work is we've got like a precompiled header, and that's what this thing looks for. So we need our, I think we can get away with just having two files here for an empty stubbed out thing. Oh yeah, I've got all this logging stuff that I want to be able to use as well. Alright, so this is going to be the I need the module file, and we need the PCH file. Dashkin editor, extensions, runtime, engine types, paper 2D module. Alright, so we don't need you. So get our logging stuff set up. Dashkin editor extensions, runtime. It's going to be the Dashkin editor shims runtime. Gosh, this plugin stuff is kind of nasty. Alright, editor tools, we don't need all that. Don't need all this. I think we can take out pretty much everything here. So to make a module, you have to actually implement some of this stuff. Register asset type action. I don't think we need to create these things like via right click, but we might need to. God, let's just make this simple to start with. Alright, so we just need startup and shutdown module are the two things we need. So shutdown module. Okay, so we can probably just get rid of everything in here and just have these functions. And we can define our loggers in here. So I think that'll define our module interface, and I think this will get all of our loggers set up properly. So that might build already for that one. We've got this, we disabled some of the stuff that they added, so we shouldn't have header include problems for some of it. Alright, now we have to get this other side hooked up. This is editor shims runtime. Alright, so clear that read-only flag. Editor shims. Into private, we need, yeah, these basic things in here. No, we don't need any of these things here. Or these. Alright, ChIMG, Webscape, Landscape. No, we don't need you. Alright, so it's supposed to be editor extensions, or editor shims runtime. Alright, cool. So we got that. I'm gonna put a placeholder.txt here. What is this Dashkin editor extensions runtime? We've got like can't include engine.h, a whole bunch of stuff we really don't need. So I think I can get rid of all this. So all we need are these two things filled out. Dashkin editor shims runtime. Alright, let's rename these. And this is gonna be kind of boring because it's a whole bunch of boilerplate crap because of the language. But you gotta do it sometimes. Default module implementation, Dashkin editor, shims runtime, private PCH, Dashkin editor, shims runtime.h. Alright, so this is looking for this editor shims runtime.h file, which I guess should be inside of this public folder. So why don't we just go snag that. And I deleted it earlier, just a second ago. Let's see what we actually need out of it. I think all we're going to need is this. And we might want to just remove a lot of our stuff. Like this should be pretty lightweight. I want to see what the logging constants.h has in it. Like we've got all of our pound defines for everything in here. Yeah, I think well, it might work. Alright. I think I've got my modules set up properly, so let's just generate project files and see what explodes. What could possibly go wrong? So you can see we've got our two plugins here with our build everythings. See if we can build it. Well, supposedly it built. So what we're going to want to try here is inside of our runtime plugin, we're going to want to include we're going to check this folder out. This file, that is. Alright, we'll add these in here. So this is the Dashkin editor shims runtime. We want to add that to the public dependency module names, and we also want to include that in the... God, I absolutely hate that autocomplete there. Let's see if we can include the runtime plugin. Yes, you know we're actually compiling it. It's kind of funny to have an actual project that can, you know, save assets and do all sorts of stuff. Even just a small project with 2 people here with Unreal 4, I'm having to make 4 separate editor plugins to just make my game. We're not even trying to do anything super complicated, right? We just want a U asset with binary data that we can statically create. You know, we can statically generate some data and nicely save it off as a U asset when we're in the editor. You know, it's not a super advanced concept of like, hey, I want to pre-compute something and then store it off. You know, I could just like save that file or something and then like load it up at runtime, but like I'd like to work within the Unreal, you know, system. I didn't see anything that supports just like I need a binary junk drawer U asset. Okay, so the shims runtime looks like it got included properly. Let's see if we can include the Dashkin editor shims editor itself. Here we go. Getting some errors. That means we're making progress. Well, in this case, getting some errors means we're actually compiling our stuff, which is a good sign for that I'm not completely screwing this up. Just a lot of boilerplate with editor code. It's not as straightforward as you might think. Creating stuff that actually creates stuff inside of the editor. What I would kind of like is if instead of having to like write C++ code to deal with all the editor windows, like it'd be kind of cool if you could just write like JavaScript plugins or some crap like that, and they ran like a V8 plugin shim thing for you, and you could just like write little web pages that show up in the editor and can access editor functions. I mean, the danger there is that everything becomes bloated and crap, in like a total crap fest. How to find log editor Dashkin editor shims editor. Is that what I need? Because as soon as you have like some sort of JavaScript plugin framework, you're just opening the door to the wild, wild west of horrifying. And nobody wants the wild, wild west of horrifying. I mean, some people might, but they're also the kind of people who want to run JavaScript on everything. Just don't talk to those people. Alright, so supposedly I've created my 2 plugins and everything like that, and what we're going to want to do here is I guess we're going to want to start using them, aren't we? So what we want is the kind of this at the editor extensions runtime. Yeah, so the editor extensions runtime are going to need the data structures for this thing. So if we go into our editor extensions runtime game, I think it's game data. Yeah, if we copy these guys over here, so we go to editor shims runtime, we go to public. Let's make a folder called data. Throw this, let's not call it Dashkin game data, let's call it Dashkin shims data. And let's make sure inside of our shims runtime that we include our files properly. It's, yeah, okay, so it's like this to include these. Basically, these includes here, I could generate these, but I want to be able to edit, include everything in the project just by the name of the file instead of having to do like /generated/blah. That really helps with refactoring stuff in C++. And since it's kind of a small project, I can just maintain this list without a real problem. But in like a real studio sort of situation, you probably auto-generate this private includes path as part of a build step or something. And it's kind of bad practice, at least in my mind it's bad practice to have like, you know, /graphics/graphicsutils.h. It should be just like #include graphicsutils.h. That way there can never be 2 graphicsutils.h, you know, in the same project. and stuff like that. It helps keep it from getting completely out of hand. Yeah, and the same thing if you have like any dot slashes and crap like that in your header includes, like something's going wrong with your life. And it probably started pretty early on in life. Alright, so it's going to be public/data is what we want. Alright, so let's... I don't want to have to regenerate the project files at the moment, so I'll just make it as it would be generated. Alright, so we'll slap this stuff together. Alright, so this is going to be Dashkin shims data generated. That's the wrong copyright. Epic Games didn't make this. I made this. Alright, so this will be a Dashkin storage object. This will be Dashkin editor extensions, Dashkin editor shims runtime. Alright, so we want Dashkin shims data.h. And we don't have to do anything. We'll have a reset function. That'll be it. Alright, let's see if that lets us file. And to be honest, this process of making like editor plugins and stuff like that in C++ for Unreal is not awful. Like if I can just kind of bang out some project includes here and just include it without too much trouble like this, you know, it's a pretty big C++ engine for them to have it streamlined down to, you know, it not taking, you know, 4 hours of horrifying mess. It's pretty nice. Right, this editor shims runtime. So this this include here basically lets us export this thing so that other plugins can actually reference this class. I don't really know exactly what that does, but it has something to do with exporting the ability for people to use the object that you've defined in a separate plugin. So there are some magic incantations you have to do in order to get things to actually work across plugins, and that's one of the magic incantations, is you have to include this blah 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 underscore API def at the front of your objects. And if only the Unreal Header tool just supported proper pound defines for conditional compilation stuff, we'd be good to go, but it doesn't, because it's stupid. Alright, so we're going to make a asset object factory for this thing, so we're going to need to copy the asset factories. And we're going to need to throw it inside of editor extensions editor. Yeah, let's just call this thing factories. This will be Dashkin shim object factories. So this is going to be add factories, shim object factories. Wait a minute. This needs to go in the public section of this thing, doesn't it? Because we're going to be referencing it, so I should just chuck this into the public folder. I don't need to have much organization. We're not going to be doing much with this. Alright, so we've got our, this is going to be the Dashkin shims data, so this is going to be the Dashkin storage object. Storage object factory. It's going to be Dashkin shims object factories .generated.h. That'll be a U factory. Alright, so Dashkin editor shims editor private. So Dashkin shims object factories.h. And we're also going to need to include the Dashkin shims data.h. So we can define our factory here, and we should be able to, in this plugin, reference the shims data object itself here, because we've exported it. Alright, let's see.